Chapter 2, Rights in the Indian Constitution. Introduction. The Constitution is not only about the composition of the various organs of government and the relations among them. As we studied in the last chapter, the Constitution is a document that sets limits on the powers of the government and ensures a democratic system in which all persons enjoy certain rights. As we studied in the last chapter, the Constitution is a document that sets limits on the powers of a government and ensures a democratic system in which all persons enjoy certain rights. In this in this chapter, we shall study the fundamental rights contained in the Indian Constitution. Part 3 of the Constitution of India lists the fundamental rights and also mentions the limits on these rights. In the past 6 decades, the scope of rights has changed and in some respects expanded. After studying this chapter, you would know what are the various fundamental rights listed in the Constitution of India? How these rights are protected? What role the judiciary has played in protecting and interpreting these rights? And what is the difference between the fundamental rights and the directive principles of state policy? Chapter 2, the importance of riots. In 1982, during the construction work for Asian Games, the government engaged a few contractors. These contractors employed a large number of very poor construction workers from different parts of the country to build the flyovers and stadiums. These workers were kept in poor working conditions and were paid less than the minimum wages decided by the government. A team of social scientists studied their poor condition and petitioned the Supreme Court. They argued that employing a person to work for less than the minimum prescribed wages amounts to begar or forced labor, which is a violation of fundamental rights against exploitation. The court accepted this plea and directed the government to ensure that thousands of workers get prescribed wa- wages for their work. Marshal Lalung Bas 23 when he was arrested, a resident Machal Lalung was 23 when he was arrested, a resident of Chuburi village in Moregaon district of Assam. Machal was charged of causing grievous injuries. He was found mentally too unstable to stand trial and was sent as under trial to Lokpriya Gopinath Bardolai Mental Hospital in Tejpur for treatment. Machal was treated successfully and doctors wrote twice to jail authorities in 1967 and 1996 that he was fit to stand trial, but no one paid any attention. Machal Lalung remained in judicial custody. Machal Lalung was released in July 2005. He was 77 then. He has spent 54 years under custody during which his case never came up for hearing. He was freed when a team appointed by National Human Rights Commission intervened after an inspection of under trials in the state. Machal's entire life was wasted because a proper trial against him never took place. Our constitution gives every citizen the right to life and liberty. This means that every citizen must also have the right to fair and speedy trial. Machal's case shows that shows what happens when trials granted by the constitution are not available in practice. In the case of the first instance, also there was violation of rights provided in the constitution, but it was challenged in the court. As a result, workers could get what was due to them in the form of their rightful wages. The constitutional guarantee of the right against exploitation ensured justice to these workers. Bill of Rights. Both these examples show the importance of having rights and the actual implementation of these rights. A democracy must ensure that individuals have certain rights and that the government will always recognize these rights. Therefore, it is often a practice in most democratic countries to list the rights of the citizens in the constitution itself. Such a list of rights mentioned and protected by the constitution is called the Bill of Rights. A Bill of Rights prohibits government from thus acting against the rights of individuals and ensures a remedy in case of there is violation of these rights. From whom does a constitution protect the rights of the individual? The rights of a person may be threatened by another person or private organization. In such a situation, the individual would need the protection of government. So it is necessary that the government is bound to protect the rights of the individual. On the other hand, the organs of government, the legislature, executive, bureaucracy, and even the judiciary in the course of their functioning may violate the rights of the person. Fundamental rights in Indian Constitution. Fundamental rights in Indian Constitution. During our freedom struggle, the leaders of the freedom movement had realized the importance of rights and demanded that the British rulers should respect rights of the people. The Motilal Nehru Committee had demanded a Bill of Rights as far back as in 1928. It was therefore natural that when India became independent and the constitution was being prepared, there were no two opinions on the inclusion and protection of rights in the constitution. The constitution listed the rights that would be especially protected and called them fundamental rights. The word fundamental suggests that these rights are so important that the Constitution has separately listed them and made a special provisions for their protection. The fundamental rights are so important that the Constitution itself ensures that they are not violated by the government. Fundamental rights are different from other rights available to us. While ordinary legal rights are protected and enforced by ordinary law, fundamental rights are protected and guaranteed by the Constitution of the country. Ordinary rights may be changed by the legislature by ordinary process of lawmaking, but a fundamental right may only be changed by amending the Constitution itself. Besides this, no organ of the government can act in a manner that violates them. As we shall study below in this chapter, judiciary has the powers and responsibility to protect the fundamental rights from violations by actions of the government. Executive as well as legislative actions can be declared illegal by the judiciary if these violate the fundamental rights or restrict them in an unreasonable manner. However, fundamental rights are not absolute or unlimited rights. Government can put reasonable restrictions on the exercise of our fundamental rights. So, Bill of Rights in the South African Constitution. The South African Constitution was inaugurated in December 1996. Its creation and promulgation took place at a time when South Africa still faced a threat of civil war after the dissolution of the apartheid government. The South African Constitution says that its Bill of Rights is the cornerstone of democracy in South Africa. It forbids discrimination on the grounds of race, gender, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, language, and birth. It grants perhaps the most extensive range of rights to the citizens. A special constitutional court enforces the rights enshrined in the Constitution. Some of the rights included in the Constitution of South Africa include right to dignity, right to privacy, right to fair labor practices, right to healthy environment, and right to protection of environment, right to adequate housing, right to health care, food, water, and social security, children's rights. Children's rights, right to basic and higher education, right of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities, right to information. Fundamental rights are different from other rights available to us. While ordinary legal rights are protected and enforced by ordinary law, fundamental rights are protected and guaranteed by the Constitution of the country. Ordinary rights may be changed by the legislature by ordinary process of lawmaking, but a fundamental right may only be changed by amending the Constitution itself. Besides this, no organ of the government can act in a manner that violates them. As we shall study below in this chapter, judiciary has the powers and responsibility to protect the fundamental rights from violations by actions of The government executive as well as legislative actions can be declared illegal by the judiciary if these violate the fundamental rights or restrict them in an unreasonable manner. However, fundamental rights are not absolute or unlimited rights. Government can put reasonable restrictions on the exercise of our fundamental rights. Compare the fund right to equality. Right to equality. Consider the following two situations. These are imaginary situations, but similar things do happen and can happen. Do you think they involve violation of fundamental rights? Swadesh Kumar is visiting his village. He is accompanied by one of his friends. They decided to have a cup of tea at the village roadside hotel. The shopkeeper knew Swadesh Kumar but asked the name of his friend to know his caste. After this, the shopkeeper served tea to Swadesh Kumar in a nice mug while his friend was given tea in an earthen cup because he was Dalit. An order is served for An order is served to poor newsreaders of a television channel that they would no longer read the news on a screen. They are all women. The reason given is that they are above the age of 55. Two male newsreaders above the same age are not barred from presenting the news. Constitution of India, Part 3 of the Constitution of India, Fundamental Rights, Right to Equality. Right to equality, equality before law, equal protection of laws, prohibition of discrimination on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth, equal access to shops, hotels, wells, tanks, bathing huts, roads, etc. Equality of opportunity in public employment, abolition of untouchability, abolition of titles, right to freedom, protection of right to freedom of speech and expression, assemble peacefully, form associations or unions, move freely throughout the territory of India, reside and settle in any part of India, practice and any profession or to carry on any occupation, trade or business, protection in respect of conviction for offences, right to life and personal liberty, right to education, protection against arrest and detention in certain cases, right against exploitation, prohibition of traffic in human beings and forced labor, prohibition of employment of children in hazardous jobs, right to freedom of religion, freedom of conscience and free profession, practice and propagation of religion, freedom to manage religious affairs, freedom to pay taxes for promotion of any particular religion, freedom to attend or worship in certain educational institutions. Cultural and educational rights, protection of language, culture of minorities, right of minorities to establish educational institutions, right to constitutional remedies, right to move the courts to issue directions or orders, writs for enforcement of rights. These are examples of clear discrimination. In one instance, the discrimination is based on caste, and in another, it is based on gender. Do you think that such discrimination is justified? Of course, no. Right to equality tries to do away with such and other discrimination. It provides for equal access to public places like shops, hotels, places of entertainment, bails, bathing huts, and places of worship. There cannot be any discrimination in this access on the grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth. It also prohibits any discrimination in public employment on any of the above mentioned basis. This right is very important because our society did not practice equal access in the past. The practice of untouchability is one of the crudest manifestations of inequality. This has been abolished under the right to equality. The same right also provides that the state shall confer no title on a person except those who excel themselves in military or academic field. Thus, right to equality strives to make India a true democracy by ensuring a sense of equality of dignity and status among all its citizens. Have you read the preamble to our constitution? How does it describe equality? You will find that the preamble mentions two things about equality: equality of status and equality of opportunity. Equality of opportunity means that all sections of the society enjoy equal opportunities, but in a society where there are various kinds of social inequalities, what does equal opportunity mean? The Constitution clarifies that the government can implement a special schemes and measures for improving the conditions of certain sections of society, children, women, and the socially and educationally backward classes. You may have heard about reservation in jobs and in admissions. You would have wondered why there are reservations if we follow the principle of equality. Article 16, Clause 4. Nothing in this article shall prevent the state from making any provision for the reservation of appointments or posts in favor of any backward class of citizens which, in the opinion of the state, is not adequately represented in the services under the state. In fact, Article 16, Clause 4 of the Constitution explicitly clarifies that a policy like reservation will not be seen as a violation of right to equality. If you see the spirit of the Constitution, this is required for the fulfillment of the right to equality of opportunity. Right to freedom, equality, and freedom or liberty are the two rights that are most essential to a democracy. It is possible to think of the one without thinking of the other. Liberty means this right is not just confined to a guarantee against taking away an individual's life, but has wider application. Various judgments of Supreme Court have expanded the scope of this right. The Supreme Court has ruled that this right also includes right to live with human dignity, free from exploitation. The court has held that right to shelter and livelihood is also included in the right to life because no person can live without the means of living, that is the means of livelihood. Preventive detention. Ordinarily, a person would be arrested after he or she has reportedly committed some offense. However, there are exceptions to this. Sometimes a person can be arrested simply out of the apprehension that he or she is likely to engage in unlawful activity and imprisoned for some time without following the above mentioned procedure. This is known as preventive detention. It means that if the government feels that a person can be threat to law and order or to the peace and security of the nation, it can detain or arrest that person. This preventive detention can be extended only for 3 months. After 3 months, such a case is brought before an advisory board for review. On the face of it, preventive detention looks like an effective tool in the hands of the government to deal with antisocial elements or subversives. But this provision has often been misused by the government. Many people think that there must be greater safeguards in this law so that it may not be misused against people for reasons other than that which are really justified. In fact, there is a clear tension between right to life and personal liberty and the provision for preventive detention. Other freedoms, you can see that under the right to freedom there are some other rights as well. These rights however are not absolute. Each of these is subject to restrictions imposed by the government. For example, right to freedom of speech and expression is subject to restrictions such as public order, peace and morality, etc. Freedom to assemble too is to be exercised peacefully and without arms. The government may impose restrictions in certain areas, declaring the assembly of five or more persons as unlawful. Such powers can be easily misused by the administration. The genuine protest against an act or policy of government by the people may be denied permission. However, if the people are aware and vigilant in regard to their rights and choose to protest against such acts of administration, such misuse becomes rare. In the Constituent Assembly itself, some members had expressed their dissatisfaction about restrictions on rights. I feel that many of these fundamental rights have been framed from the point of view of a police constable. You will find that very minimum rights have been considered and are almost invariably followed by a proviso. Almost every article is followed by a proviso which takes away the rights almost completely. What should be our conception of fundamental rights? We want to incorporate every one of those rights which our people want to get. Somnath Lahiri Constituent Assembly debates rights of accused. Our constitution ensures that persons accused of various offences would also get sufficient protection. We often tend to believe that anyone who is charged with some offences is guilty. However, no one is guilty unless the court has found that person guilty of an offense. It is also necessary that a person accused of any crime should get adequate opportunity to defend herself or himself. To ensure a fair trial in courts, the Constitution has provided three rights. No person would be punished for the same offense more than once. No law shall declare any actions as illegal from a backlid, and no person shall be asked to give evidence against himself or herself. Right against exploitation. In our country, there are millions of people who are under underprivileged and deprived. They may be subjected to exploitation by their fellow human beings. One such form of exploitation in our country has been begar or forced labor without payment. or forced labor without payment. Another closely related form of exploitation is buying and selling of human beings and using them as slaves. Both of these are prohibited under the Constitution. Forced labor was imposed by landlords, moneylenders, and other wealthy persons in the past. Some form of bonded labor still continues in the country, especially in Brickenburg. It has now been declared a crime and it is punishable. The Constitution also forbids employment of children below the age of 14 years in dangerous jobs like factories and mines, with child labor being made illegal and right to education becoming a fundamental right for children. This right against exploitation has become more meaningful. Right to freedom of religion. According to our constitution, everyone enjoys the right to follow the religion of his or her choice. This freedom is considered as a hallmark of democracy. Historically, there were rulers and emperors in different parts of the world who did not allow residents of their countries to enjoy the rights to freedom of religion. Persons following a religion different from that of the ruler were either persecuted or forced to convert to the official religion of the rulers. Therefore, democracy has always incorporated the freedom to follow the religion of one's choice as one of its basic principles. Of faith and worship. Freedom of faith and worship. In India, everyone is free to choose a religion and practice that religion. Freedom of religion also includes the freedom of conscience. This means that a person may choose any religion or may choose not to follow any religion. Freedom of religion includes the freedom to profess, follow, and propagate any religion. Freedom of religion is subject to certain limitations. The government can impose restrictions on the practice of freedom of religion in order to protect public order, morality, and health. This means that the freedom of religion is not an unlimited right. The government can interfere in religious matters for rooting out certain social evils. For example, in the past, the government has taken steps banning practices like sati, bigamy, or human sacrifice. Such restrictions cannot be opposed in the name of interference in right to freedom of religion. The limitations on the right to freedom of religion always produce tensions between followers of various religions and the government. When the government seeks to restrict some activities of any religious group, people of that religion feel that this is this is interference in their religion. Freedom of religion becomes a matter of political controversy for yet another reason. The Constitution has guaranteed the right to propagate one's religion. This includes persuading people to convert from one religion to another. However, some people resent conversions on the ground that these are based on intimidation or inducement. The Constitution does not allow forcible conversions. It only gives us the right to spread information about our religion and thus attract others to it. Equality of all religions. Being a country which is home to several religions, it is necessary that the government must extend equal treatment to different religions. Negatively, it means that government will not favor any particular religion. India does not have any official religion. We don't have to belong to any particular religion in order to be a prime minister or president or judge or any other public official. We have also seen that under the right to equality, there is a guarantee that government will not discriminate on the basis of religion in giving employment. The institutions run by the state will not preach any religion or give religious education, nor will they favor persons of any religion. The objective of these provisions is to sustain and nurture the principle of secularism. Cultural and educational rights. When we talk of the Indian Constitution, the image of diversity comes before our minds. India is not made up of a monolithic society. We are a society that has vast diversity. In such a society that is full of diversity, there would be social sections which are small in numbers compared to some other groups. If a group is in minority, will it have to adopt the culture of the majority? Our constitution believes that diversity is our strength. Therefore, one of the fundamental rights is the right of minorities to maintain their culture. This minority status is not dependent only upon religion, linguistic and cultural minorities are also included in this provision. Minorities are groups that have common language or religion, and in particular part of the country or in the country as a whole, they are outnumbered by some other social section. Such communities have a culture, language, and a script of their own and have the right to conserve and develop these. All minorities religious or linguistic can set up their own educational institutions. By doing so, they can preserve and develop their own culture. The government will not, while granting aid to educational institutions, discriminate against any educational institution on the basis that it is under the management of minority community. A heavy responsibility would be cast on the majority to see that, in fact, the minorities feel secure. The only safety for the minorities lies in a secular state. It pays them to be nationalist. The majority community should not boast of their national outlook. They should try to place themselves in the position of minorities and try to appreciate their fears. All demands for safeguards are the products of those fears that minorities have in their minds as regards their language, their script, and also about the services. Sardar Hukum Si Constituent Assembly debates. Right to constitutional remedies. One would agree that our constitution contains a very impressive list of fundamental rights, but merely writing down a list of rights is not enough. There has to be a way through which they could be realized in practice and defended against any attack on these rights. A right to constitutional remedies is the means through which this is to be achieved. Dr. Ambedkar considered the right to constitutional remedies as heart and soul of the Constitution. It is so because this right gives a citizen the right to approach a High Court or Supreme Court to get any of the fundamental rights restored in case of their violation. The Supreme Court and the High Courts can issue orders and give directives to the government for the enforcement of rights. The courts can issue various special orders known as writs. Five types of writs: habeas corpus, mandamus, prohibition, quo warranto, certiorari. Habeas corpus. A writ of habeas corpus means that the court orders that the arrested person should be presented before it. It can also order to set free an arrested person in the manner or grounds of if the manner or grounds of arrest are not lawful or satisfactory. Mandamus. This writ is issued when the court finds that a particular office holder is not doing legal duty and thereby is infringing on the right of an individual. Prohibition. This writ is issued by a High Court or Supreme Court when a lower court has considered a case going beyond its jurisdiction. Quo warranto. If the court finds that a person is holding office but is not entitled to hold that office, it issues the writ of quo warranto and restricts that person from acting as an office holder. Certiorari. Under this writ, the court orders a lower court or another authority to transfer a matter pending before it to the higher authority or court. Apart from the judiciary, many other mechanisms have been created in later years for the protection of rights. You may have heard about the National Commission on Minorities, the National Commission on Women, National Commission on Scheduled Castes, etc. These institutions protect the rights of women, minorities, or Dalits. Besides, the National Human Rights Commission has also been established by law to protect the fundamental and other kinds of rights. National Human Rights Commission in HRC, the real test of the rights given by any constitution is in their actual implementation. The poor, illiterate, and the deprived sections of the society must be able to exercise their rights. Independent organizations like the People's Union for Civil Liberties (PUCL) or People's Union for Democratic Rights (PUDR) have been working as watchdogs against the violations of rights. In this background, the government has established in 1993 an institution, the National Human Rights Commission. The National Human Rights Commission is composed of a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, a former Judge of the Supreme Court, a former Chief Justice of a High Court, and two other members who have knowledge and practical experience in matters relating to human rights. The Commission's functions include inquiry at its own initiative or on a petition presented to it by a victim into complaint of violation of human rights, visit to jails to study the condition of the inmates, undertakings and promoting research in the field of human rights, etc. The Commission receives complaints in thousands every year. Those related to custodial disappearances, police excesses, failure in taking action related to women, etc. Its most significant intervention has been on the disappeared youth in Punjab and investigation and trial of Punjab cases where its intervention proved effective. The commission does not have the power of prosecution. It can merely make recommendations to the government or recommend believe that it will be directive principles of state policy. The makers of our constitution knew that the independent India was going to face independent India was going to face many challenges foremost. Among these was the challenge to bring about equality and well-being of all citizens. They also found and certain policy direction was required for handling these problems. At the same time, the Constitution did not allow the future governments to be bound by certain policy decisions. right to property. Behind the controversy about the relationship between rights and directive principles, there was one important reason in the Constitution. Originally, there was a fundamental right to acquire, possess, and maintain property, but the Constitution made it clear that property could be taken away by the government for public welfare. Since 1950, government made many laws that limited this right to property. This right was at the center of the long debate over the relationship between rights and directive principles. Finally, in 1973, the Supreme Court gave a decision that the right to property was not part of the basic structure of the Constitution, and therefore Parliament had power to abridge this right by an amendment. In 1978, the 44th Amendment to the Constitution removed the right to property from the list of fundamental rights and converted it into a simple legal right under Article 300A. They can express their innermost thoughts and desires. They can share their ideas and discuss what they consider to be good and desirable. Political theory has its roots in the twin aspects of human self. It underlies certain basic questions such as political theory examines questions of this kind and systematically thinks about the values that inform political life. Values such as freedom, equality, and justice. It explains the meaning and significance of these and other related concepts. It clarifies the existing definitions of these concepts by focusing on some major political thinkers of the past and present. It also examines the extent to which freedom or equality are actually present in the institutions that participate in everyday life, such as schools, shops, buses, or trains or government offices. At an advanced level, it looks at whether existing definitions are adequate and how existing institutions, government bureaucracy, and uh, policy practices must be modified to become more democratic. The objective of political theory is to train citizens to think rationally about political questions and assess what is meant by politics and political theory and why we should study it. What is politics? Let us debate. What is politics? You would have noticed that people have different ideas about what politics is. Political leaders and persons who contest elections and hold political office may argue that it is a kind of public service. Some others associate politics with manipulation and intrigue undertaken to pursue ambitions and satisfy wants. A few think of politics as what politicians do. If they see politicians defecting from parties, making false promises tall and tall claims, manipulating different sections, pursuing personal or group interest ruthlessly, and in worst cases, stooping to crime. They link politics with scams. It is so prevalent in this way of thinking that when we see people in different walks of life trying to promote their interest by any means possible, we say they are playing politics. If we see a cricketer manipulating to stay in the team, or a fellow student trying to use his father's position, or a colleague in office mindlessly agreeing with the boss, we say he or she is playing dirty politics. Disillusioned by such pursuits of selfishness, we despair of politics. We say, I am not interested in politics, or I am going to stay away from politics. It is not only ordinary people who despair of politics, even businessmen and entrepreneurs routinely blame politics for their woes, even as they benefit from and fund various political parties. Cinema stars also campaign of politics, though they seem to be adept at the game once they join it. We are thus confronted with conflicting images of politics. Is politics is undesirable activity? We are thus confronted with conflicting images of politics. Is politics an undesirable activity that we should stay away from and get rid of, or is it a worthwhile activity which we must engage with in order to make a better world. It is unfortunate that politics has come to be associated with the pursuit of self interest by any and every method. We need to realize that politics is an important and integral part of any society. Mahatma Gandhi once observed that politics envelops us like the coils of a snake, and there is no other way out but to wrestle with it. No society can exist without some form of political organization and collective decision making. A society that wants to sustain itself needs to take into account the multiple needs and interests of its members. A number of social institutions such as the family, tribes, and economic institutions have emerged to help people fulfill their needs and aspirations. Such institutions help us find ways of living together, acknowledging our obligation and each other to each other. Among such institutions, governments play an important part. How governments are formed and how they function is thus an important focus of politics, but politics is not confined to affairs of government. In fact, what government do is relevant because it affects the lives of people in many different ways. We see that governments determine our economic policy and foreign policy and educational policy. These policies can help to improve the lives of people, but an efficient or corrupt government can also endanger people's lives and security. If the government in power allows any conflicts to become violent, markets close down, and such as schools are shut. These disrupt our lives. We cannot buy things that we may need urgently. Those who are sick cannot reach the hospital. Even the school schedules gets affected. Syllabi cannot be completed, and we may have to take extra coaching for the exams and pay tuition fees. If on the other hand, the government makes policies to increase literacy and employment, we may get an opportunity to go to a good school and get a decent job. Since the actions of the government affect us deeply, we take a lively interest in what governments do. We form associations and organize campaigns to articulate our demands. We negotiate with others and try to shape the goals that government pursue. When we disagree with the policies of the government, we protest and organize demonstrations to persuade the government to change the existing laws. We passionately debate the actions of our representatives and discuss whether corruption has increased or decreased. We ask whether corruption can be rooted out, whether reservations for specific groups are just or not. We try to understand why some parties and leaders win elections. In this way, we look for the rationale underlying the prevalent chaos and decay and aspire to create a better world. To sum up, politics arises from the fact that we have different visions of what is just and desirable for us and our society. It involves the multiple negotiations that go on in society through which collective decisions are made at one level. It involves what governments do and how they relate to the aspirations of the people. At another level, it involves how people struggle and influence decision making. People may be said to engage in political activity whenever they negotiate with each other and take part in collective activities which are designed to promote social development and help to resolve common problems. What do we study in political theory? What do we study in political theory? If we look around us, what we see would be movement, development and change. But if we look deeper, we would also see certain values and principles that have inspired people and guided policies. Ideals like democracy, freedom or equality, for instance, different countries may try to protect such values by enshrining them in their constitutions, as is the case with the American and the Indian constitutions. These documents did not just emerge overnight, they are built upon the ideas and principles debated almost since the time of Cordelia, Aristotle to Jean Jacques Rousseau, Karl Marx, Mahatma Gandhi, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. As far back as the 5th century BC, Plato and Aristotle discussed with their students whether monarchy or democracy was better. In modern times, Rousseau first argued for freedom as a fundamental right of humankind. Karl Marx argued that was as equality was as crucial as freedom. Closer home, Mahatma Gandhi discussed the meaning of genuine freedom or Swaraj in his book Hind Swaraj. Dr. Ambedkar vigorously argued uh, that the scheduled caste must be considered a minority and as such must receive a special protection. These ideas find their place in the Indian constitution. Our preamble enshrines freedom and equality. The chapter on rights in the Indian constitution abolishes untouchability in any form. Gandhian principles find a place in directive principles. Political theory deals with the ideas and principles that shape constitutions, governments, and social life in a systematic manner. It clarifies the meaning of concepts such as freedom, equality, justice, democracy, secularism, and so on. It probes the significance of principles such as rule of law, separation of powers, judicial review, etc. This is done by examining the arguments advanced by different thinkers in defense of these concepts. Though Rousseau or Marx or Gandhi did not become politicians, their ideas influenced generations of politicians everywhere. There are also contemporary thinkers who draw upon them to defend freedom or democracy in our own time. Besides examining arguments, political theorists also reflect upon our current political experiences and point out trends and possibilities for the future. Can you identify the political principle or value which is in application in each of the following statements or situations? I should be able to decide which subjects I want to study in a school. The practice of untouchability has been abolished. All Indians are equal before law. Minorities can have their own schools and colleges. Foreigners who are visiting India cannot vote in Indian elections. There should be no censorship of media or films. Students should be consulted while planning the annual day functions. Everyone must join the Republic Day celebrations. But is all this relevant for us now? Have we not already achieved freedom and democracy? While India is free and independent, questions regarding freedom and equality have not ceased to crop up. This is because issues concerning freedom, equality, democracy arise in many areas of social life and they are being implemented in different sectors at different paces. For instance, although equality may exist in political sphere in the form of equal rights, it may not exist to some extent in the economic or social spheres. People may enjoy equal political rights but still be discriminated against socially because of their caste or party. Some people may have a privileged place in society while others are deprived even of basic necessities. Some are able to achieve whatever goals they set for themselves while many are unable even to go to a school so that they can have decent jobs in the future. For them, freedom is still a distant dream. Secondly, though freedom is guaranteed in our constitution, we encounter new interpretations all the time. This is a bit like playing a game. As we play chess or cricket, we learn how to interpret the rules